I came to the museum to see artwork, but instead, I only found mirrors. I looked at the statue of the girl just like me and was blind to what's mine and what's hers. All I could see was the curve of her hips, the roundness of our stomach, the way my back dips. I saw my mother in the goddesses, my father in the gods, my sisters in the naiads, and my love in every pair of arms. Then when I left, I no longer saw the world. The buildings were brushstrokes, my lipstick was paint. My body is a sculpture, and judgment can wait. I am exactly halfway through my 20s, and I know nothing. I feel like every day I either make absolutely nothing of myself or I learn something new, which is great, but whenever I learn something new, I realize how much I don't know about the world and about myself, and sometimes learning and growing can feel pointless and frustrating if you feel like there's no end in sight, if you feel like you'll never reach a goal or be done. But I don't think it's pointless, because I think it's supposed to feel that way. This year I realized I kind of have two choices. I can either sit back and watch the world happen around me, or I can throw myself out there. I can make my own life. I can step out into the current, throw spaghetti at the walls, see what sticks, and try to figure out why. I'm consciously trying to find a balance of doing things I love and doing things that scare me. And more often than not, those two end up being the same thing, which is even more scary, but even more rewarding. And this month, I had the opportunity to go to Paris, last minute with almost no planning, which, I'm an overthinker, I'm an overplanner, a bit of a control freak, but we're working on it. A last minute trip is terrifying, but it felt a little bit like a sign because, I don't know, as a creative person, as an artist, as a writer, Paris feels like heaven for inspiration. And it's not just about the art and the history and everywhere you look, there's beautiful architecture. It's the people. It's getting outside, talking to strangers, sitting by the river, and just making yourself feel like you are a part of the pulse of the city. And for the 2.5 days that I was in Paris, I decided to keep a journal. And when I tell you I filled this entire thing, I felt like I was learning so much about life and myself, and I didn't want to miss anything. So basically, I just treated the city like it was a college, and I was a student, and I wanted to take as many notes as possible. And of course, my favorite classroom was the art museum. Something about art museums has always kind of felt like home to me. I grew up constantly going to art museums with my family. I went to summer camp at the art museum. I took classes at the art museum. It never felt stagnant. It felt so full of life. When I think about going there, I have memories of just sitting there and taking in the art around me, but I also have memories running up and down the back stairs, stealing stuff from the recycling bin, and bringing it up to the top floor to try and make some weird recycled art piece. It feels like somewhere where you can learn something new, but also reinvent yourself and the world around you. But I started to realize I had never just gone to an art museum alone with no goal. And what better place to do that than Paris? So I took the whole day to just go to art museums and study through them at my own pace. My first stop, Le Petit Palais. The moment you step through the gilded doors, the world is infinitely more brilliant. The first person you meet is an angel made of bronze. Sunlight pours over her, the air around her seems to glow. In her arms, she carries a dying warrior to immortality. She feels so real that when you stand up close, you can almost hear the wind blowing through the feathers on her wings. You can feel it on your cheeks. Once you break from her gaze, you look up, and the ceiling is so high that it might as well be heaven. Delicately carved with the finest filigree, it looks like a wedding cake you'd see in the window of the finest bakery in Paris. The carvings part like clouds, giving you glimpses into a painted sky. The colors feel impressionistic, but these pieces were painted in the early 1900s as part of the symbolism movement, when artists and poets sought to evoke messages through symbolism in their work. Any medium of artwork can capture a model's essence, but there's no example of that feeling quite like a well-done sculpture. If you walk up close and look them right in the eye, sometimes you can feel the person through the marble. The spirit of the sculpture, the spirit of the model, both of them feel so distinctly present, so studying this artwork almost felt intimate. I spent a long time in the sculpture gallery. I practiced drawing them. I studied the anatomy of each part of their bodies. Then I found these paintings hidden in the back, painted by Eugène Carrier. These are part of a series called The Ages of Life. They were originally intended to decorate a wedding hall, so each piece represents a different stage of life. I love the way the shadows flow like smoke and the highlights float like milk poured into coffee. The way the scene is hazy makes the painting feel almost as if we're looking through an old window, polished just enough to see the scene on the other side, but not enough to see any of the details. The painter whose work I noticed the most of was Gustave Courbet, and it's not like I was actively seeking out his work. When I was walking through the museums, I would see a painting that I loved, and I would see who painted it, and it was always him. He led the realism movement, so he rejected all of the imaginative ideas of romanticism and only painted what he saw. And there's this phrase I keep seeing online. People use it when we're discussing, like, male film directors, photographers, artists, writers, but we're just going to use painters for this example. So the phrase is, when a man paints a woman, you can always tell whether he loves women or hates them. And granted, I don't know about Gustave Courbet's personal beliefs. There are no results on Google, and he's dead, so we can't ask him. But from the way he paints women, it feels so clear that he loves them. Especially to a modern audience who nearly every single photo of a body we see has been altered in some way, and with feminine beauty standards being impossible and mentions of the human body being taboo, his paintings are so refreshing. Because keep in mind, he was a realist. He just painted what he saw. He didn't edit the human body because he didn't need to. He painted every wrinkle, curve, fold, everything exactly how it looks in real life, because that's what's beautiful. And it was really healing for me in a lot of ways. I grew up in the age where tabloids like this were all over the grocery store aisles. I also grew up in the Catholic Church. So of course, a woman's body was like the most inappropriate and sinful thing a person could ever see. So for the vast majority of my life, when I would see a person's body, those are the connotations that came to mind. But after spending hours and hours and hours in these museums looking at these pieces of art, literally the next day, I was in a park in Paris and a woman took off her shirt to sunbathe in a bikini top in the park, where the evil little voice in my head would usually say that's so dirty, she shouldn't be doing that. Finally, it didn't say anything. But there was another voice that said, she looks just like that painting I saw. And I noticed the change immediately, and it made me so happy, and I wrote it down, and ever since then, it's been happening non-stop. I'll see people on the street, and I'm like, oh my god, they look like this painting. I'll see my friend, and I'm like, oh my god, she looks like this sculpture. And then I see myself in the mirror, and then the thoughts critiquing my own body are pretty much silent. It's just comparing myself to artwork. And that shit's really nice. It feels so much better. And that's where I got the feeling and the inspiration for the poem that I wrote and that I read in the beginning of the video. So there's that connection. And the line from the poem that's the buildings look like brushstrokes, that was inspired by my trip to the Eiffel Tower that I went to after the first museum. And if I'm honest, I didn't really have big plans of going to the Eiffel Tower because I was like, that's so touristy. I don't need to do that. But then I was like, it's a beautiful day. Who am I to let a fear of looking touristy or silly keep me from having an incredible experience? That's lame. So I went to the Eiffel Tower, and yes, I did spend longer waiting in line in the hot sun than I did actually in the tower. But when I was up there, and because I had an okay mental image of the city, I was trying to trace all the little streets, and I would look at all the teeny little buildings, and I was like, oh my god, they look like brushstrokes. My brain was still in painting mode, so I'm like, oh, okay, so these are these brushstrokes, and then the clouds are these brushstrokes, and then the people, and then the river, and then if I were the painter, I would use just a little bit of white paint to make the river glitter in the sun. The fact that I was in the museum for hours before just made the whole experience so much more magical. There was only one real downside of my little art study tour, and it's that Since the trip was last minute, the only tickets that I could get to the Louvre was for an hour before they closed. So I had to do like the biggest sin in my mind for art museums, which is try to get through the whole thing as fast as possible. Like, I hate the idea of speedrunning an art museum, but I was like, I feel like I have to. But also, like, I knew that the Louvre would be big. The Louvre is huge. Like, I was walking around the area of the Louvre and the gardens a lot, and I would look at the buildings and I'm like, oh, these are so pretty. I wonder which ones are the Louvre. Babe, they're all the Louvre. All of the buildings are the Louvre. The Louvre is 652,300 square feet. The Louvre is the largest museum in the world. So I needed a game plan. I decided to choose quality over quantity and spend what little time I had with the exhibits that meant the most to me, and that was the Greek and Roman antiquities. Before it became a museum, the Louvre was a Renaissance palace. At its heart lies a ballroom, the Salle des Caryatides. Designed by architect Pierre Lescaut starting in 1546, King Francois wanted to bring the luxury of Italian palaces to his Paris home. He died before the project could be finished, but his son, King Henry II, ensured the completion of the project. It derived its name from the Caryatides, 4 women sculpted into columns to support a musician's balcony. They were created by Jean Goujon in 1550, inspired by the Forum of Augustus built by the Roman Emperor in the 2nd century BC. Today, the Salle des Caryatides is home to a collection of Greek and Roman masterpieces. Like so many of us, I grew up enamored by Greek mythology. It was my favorite period to study in history. I knew all the names of the goddesses, the gods, the nymphs, the naiads, everything. I had all the books, and still to this day, Greek myth retellings remain like one of my favorite niche genres to read. And from studying these myths, the gods and goddesses didn't feel like symbols anymore. They didn't feel like these ancient, untouchable powers. They felt like characters. They felt like people I knew with personalities. And it's tricky because if you watch a TV show enough and you fall in love with the characters, you maybe hope to one day meet the actor that plays them. But the only way to meet Poseidon is to step into the ocean. And the only way to meet Aphrodite is to fall in love. You never really get to put an exact face to the name. But at the Louvre, you do. Because when these sacred myths were being shaped by the mouths that told them, these were the exact faces they were imagining. This face, this body, this likeness, this is the one that people have been looking at for thousands of years. And when you're exploring artwork this ancient, you're not only connecting with the original sculptors and the models that stood for these to be made, you're connecting with all of the people throughout history who saw them and loved them. And your imagination can run wild with the premise that a story you create might kind of be true. Maybe you're connecting with somebody on a Greek island thousands of years ago who was first enamored by Nike, the winged victory of Samothrace. Maybe you feel the excitement of archaeologists who rediscovered her, or as you look at the Venus de Milo, you feel the same awe as the millions of people who saw her before you since she was first brought to the Louvre in 1807. As the sun was starting to set, the galleries were painted with a golden glow. I savored every last second I had with the artwork. I left carrying the same joy you would after visiting friends or family who live much too far away. I don't know when I'll see them next, but I know I'll do everything I can to get back there someday. And while I sat in the gardens, becoming a part of the Eiffel Tower's nightly audience, I wrote. I wrote about the artwork that spoke to me today, and I realized all of my favorite works of art were pieces of art about people. The details that drew me in were the ones that made a piece lifelike, the little tiny touches that took a 2D painting or a piece of rock to a person, the ones that gave them personality, a little smirk, a little flyaway hair, some movement in a dress or a wing. Now more than ever in our digital world, I feel like I'm really noticing the beauty of people. It's the electricity that happens when we're all together. It's the laughter and the triumphs and the flaws. It's the little elbows and the nudges and the hugs and the meals together. I don't know, I guess the main takeaway, what I really learned in Paris is, what inspires me as a person and an artist the most is the magic that only people can create. Thank you so much for joining me on this little Paris museum tour through my eyes. If you had fun or if you learned something, you should totally hit that like button. I heard it's really cool to do that. And make sure to subscribe to become a little part of the art club, to come have fun, because I really think you should, and I'd love to have you along for the ride. Until next time, goodbye.